On a hot, sunny morning in July, you must remember that day, there weren't many of them, I set out from Emsworth with a friend in his little gaff-rigged boat, drifting round to Langston Quay for necessary rehydration at the ship. Evening coming on, we drifted back to what was known for many years in Emsworth as the crabbing pontoon. That is, until the miseries of the Harbour Authority banned general public access and erected 2 gates, one huge, both of them with key codes. But sure enough, all the kids in Emsworth knowing the gate codes off by heart, there were a small group of girls and a younger brother having a lovely time jumping in and out of the warm water. Our encounter with them, and with one of the girls in particular, was most disturbing. So much so that I found it difficult to get it out of my mind. This girl stood in front of the others, who gathered in a group behind her. Her posture and her body language, complete with slouch and curled lip, seemed designed to show her disrespect to us because we were adults, and therefore, in her experience, likely to be reprimanding, hostile, and aggressive towards her and her companions for simply being on the pontoon, which is the right of boat owners. But we smiled at her. "You seem to be having a great time," we said. The scowl eased just a little bit. And then my companion, formerly a teacher in several large schools based in difficult areas, asked, "You okay?" He asked about her. Radical educationalist A.S. Neil's theory was, find out about a child's interest and help him or her to live it out. And the response indeed to my friend's 3-syllable question was astounding. She started to blurt out all her distress at being excluded from the leavers' end-of-school prom. Her aggressive lip was now quivering with her emotion as she tried to control it within her. It transpired that this young girl had had problems with school, had been excluded on several occasions, but was now devastated to be missing out on this so important rite of passage as the school prom has become. And here she was with wet hair and swimsuit, ready at the least invitation to share her devastation with 2 old blokes, utter strangers. I'd like to think that we helped, if only just a tiny bit, because just then we did listen, we gave her time, and we showed interest in her life and future plans, meagre though they were. You may at this point begin to wondering why Frank is talking about this encounter on this Sunday in which we're bidden to remember prisons. It's simply because I am absolutely convinced that our bursting prisons and the bad behavior that has resulted in people being sent there are an inevitable outcome of our society's utter failure to provide adequate support and guidance to those in our society who desperately require it. And I'm further convinced that such intervention needs to happen from the cradle to break what is so obviously a generational cycle, with people from certain families following this pattern from their childhood through to prisons. The statistics are absolutely clear. The majority of people in our prisons have come from generational situations of poverty. But let's consider poverty for a moment. Not just financial poverty, though that is a part of the problem, it always is, but consider poverty of housing, even of no housing. Consider poverty of nourishing and healthy food, of loving parents, of good and appropriate education, and the experiences that can and should enrich young lives. Consider the poverty and feelings that go with exclusion from the crabbing pontoon, as wealthy old blokes potter around on it with their boats, and worse, of course, the rich kids sail around on the mill pond behind in their special sailing clothing. Consider the poverty of exclusion, even from the rite of passage that the school prom has become. Now, a few weeks ago, we witnessed with horror the violence on the streets of our cities, incited by the extreme right, but finding ready followers amongst those who quite often were angry, I believe, at their poverty of one sort or another. The strategy our society is then forced to deploy to deter such behaviour is control and punishment. More and longer prison sentences at an average cost of £51,724 per annum per prisoner. That's a lot of money. Worse, most attempts at rehabilitation courses in prison have long been abandoned under pressures of resources and overcrowding. And the probation option, which we might have turned to a few years, their experience of expertise, such as my dear Sue gained over 20 years, jettisoned, demolished by privatisation in 2014, so that now the probation service is a shadow of its former self. Can we really not find a better way forward? That question, you know, gets explored even in some TV favourites. Anybody like Lewis? Yes, quite a few of you. And in a recent replay of a Lewis episode, our hero remarked, "A child needs friendship, guidance, support, and love, not shouting and slaps." In an All Creatures Great and Small episode, I've just watched the last one, a young boy in a situation of great poverty and no visible parents adopts a dog. Vet James notes the dog is unwell and wants to help, but the boy runs away from the adult. He later even violently assaults his would-be behaviour by bashing him on the head with a branch. Siegfried reacts in condemnation. He's a bad lot. But James sees more. James perseveres. He goes time and again to find the boy, and in the end, he heals the dog and the lad, guiding him, now with Farnan's help, to find new life and purpose in assisting a lonely, bereaved farmer. And then there's Freddie Flintoff's Field of Dreams. What a moving witness that series of programs was, wasn't it, to what youth intervention can bring. And then there's Call the Midwife. Now, these stories are feel-good television, but they're not, over-romantic nonsense. They can show us at a very human level that caring intervention works. This is also nowhere better demonstrated by the Sure Start programme launched in 1999, which established centres in areas of poverty right across the country, offering skilled support to the most disadvantaged children under 5. Their programme centred on high-quality play, learning, and childcare experiences. Crucially also, providing advice about family and child healthcare and developments. Benefits followed. For this cohort, GCSE results were greatly improved, and hospitalisation of 13,000 children was avoided. But then in 2010, funding was drastically cut, most centres shut. And since 2013, over 760 posts for youth workers, 760 youth centres have closed. Can we rest easy on these issues when children are now starting to turn up at school to start school in nappies and unable to communicate with each other, let alone the staff? When children aged 7 and 8 are sometimes so filled with deep rage and frustration, they take it out on their teachers by throwing things, by pulling their hair, and even throwing chairs. As a teacher member of this congregation was telling me as this new school year loomed back in September. There is some room for optimism. With falling school numbers, the government aims that more preschool children will receive free, good quality childcare. And indeed, some are arguing, me for one, for Sure Start to restart. Good charitable work is being pioneered by Steve Chalk and the Oasis Trust, and the St. Martin's in the Fields Trust are already engaged in this issue. Plus, remember what is happening already in our church and celebrate that. There's our Little Lambs group, run with St. Albans Westlea, providing a meeting place for little children and for their mums and dads. Just being able to talk to other mums and dads about the pressures of bringing up little children in areas of poverty is a great blessing, which I've seen in every parish that I've worked in over my years. Then there's our Pallant Centre, which hosts much that is creative and caring, providing places for people to talk about their addictions of one sort and another, and so much more. And then there's Graham's enthusiastic work. Is he still with us? Is he listening? He's in the vestry. You can tell him. He got a mention. I'm going to mention Graham's enthusiastic work that he does at our local school, opening up to young hearts and minds the glory of our musical heritage and singing together. And if you've come to one of the services in midweek where some of those children come and sing, you'll see the delight in their faces at this new rich experience that he's giving to them. And now you may be thinking, well, this is all interesting stuff, but why should we be interested in this as Christians? Shouldn't we just leave it to someone else, to the government, even with their restricted budget? Well, I should hope the answer is obvious. If God is love, as Jesus most surely showed us, our calling is not only to sing about it and pray about it, though indeed we should do those things, but to ensure that love is set to work in this world of ours. And we most surely understand how this is from the life of Jesus. Do you remember that beautiful story? It seems so short and simple, but there Jesus was surrounded by the crowds, and the children crowded around him, and the grand adults said, "Go away, don't bother the preacher." And what did Jesus do? He took them in his arms and he blessed them. And that's why we must care. Amen.